It's been a long wait, but we are back. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the No Name Cinema Society, kicking off our 53rd series of episodes with our current feature, Creed 2. It is Thursday, November 29th, 2018, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler, and as you can see, I am back here in New York City. I had such a long break because I got a job shooting a feature film in Maryland, and it threw our whole schedule off, but I'm representing Maryland because I just got back from there to shoot a feature film. I'm in New York for a few days, back to LA for the Indy on Monday. But I'm here in Ditmas Park, Brooklyn, actually, and I haven't done a show here since 2015. We did Fantastic Four, Comet, and Dirty Harry here. My background's struggling. There it is, Creed 2, back up. So thank you for sticking with us through this long layoff. Let me get straight to the guys with us today. In this corner, ladies and gentlemen, the challenger, weighing 195 pounds, Patrick the Mailman Taylor.
Hey, 195, you're too kind.
About that. Something safe. and his crusty trainer, ex-champion of the world, George the Brain Pappas is here.
Hi, everybody.
Sporting the trainer stash, it looks like.
Yeah.
An unfortunate announcement, guys. Another reason for the long layoff. After 3.5 years and a handful of off-camera incidents, maybe some on-camera, Drunk Davey has quit the show that he started years ago. He actually wants the show to cease to exist after this season, but we'll have to see about that because, we don't have anything in writing along those lines. We will continue with our 53rd set of episodes and our big finale episodes in February, which is Top 10 of 2018, the Oscar preview, and, of course, our 1988 in review. Davey has agreed to do one last show, the Indie Spotlight, which will be on Monday, but that will be his final broadcast, which leads me to our schedule for this, our 53rd set of episodes, our last one of 2018 of the 4th season. Starts tonight, of course, with Creed 2. On Monday, December 3rd, Dave will be back for his final show, the Indie Spotlight, The Great Beauty, one of our 2013 indies. And then we'll have some new folks back on December 6th, a week from tonight. We're going to see E.T. and talk about that for our final classic of the year. And our final sound off is Monday, December the 10th, in which we're going to do an obscure movie discovery. And I am supposed to count down the top 5 movie scores of all time. Those of you who watch the show know that it's important that we review Creed 2, that it's one of the movies that we review. Fans of the show will tell you that know that it was our original top 10 that we did, top 10 of 2015. That was our composite #1 film. It was my #4 film of that year and Davey's #1 film of 2015. And if you added all the top 10s that we've done of 2015, 2016, 2017, it would rank 3rd all time on a composite top 10, right behind Phantom Thread and Silence. So it seems only fitting that we would do Creed 2. I assume you guys had seen the original Creed before going in to see Creed 2.
Yes.
Yep.
Everybody's prepped. I'm going to go right into the summary. Adonis Creed has gone on a winning streak since the last film and has become the world champion. Suddenly, an unforeseen challenger makes his presence known. Victor Drago, son of Ivan Drago, the man who killed Adonis's father in the ring in 1985. Rocky Balboa, who avenged Apollo's death in the ring a year later, has his reservations about getting mixed up in a repeat of events from 30 years ago. Adonis, however, feels compelled to get some revenge on his own and take down the shadow that has hung over the family name for so long. Guys, how was that summary?
I can't argue with it. It's not wrong.
So it's accurate. It wasn't, flowery enough for you? Or
no, it was spot on.
You didn't give anything away. Yeah, you didn't give anything away.
That's the goal of the summaries. All right. George is chomping at the bit here, it seems, ladies and gentlemen, for opening thoughts. So I'm going to let him go first. Remember, one sentence, George. You can dig deeper later. You were disappointed when I signed this movie.
Yeah, that's true. One sentence. Let's see.
This happens every time. So it boggles me that no one's prepared with one sentence when they know.
No, comfort food has its place. This is a good example of it.
Okay. Patrick.
In continuing that idea, they tried to wrap it up in a neat bow, and it should have wrapped up uglier than it did. I really didn't like the ending.
Okay, and for me, history repeats itself one too many times for my taste in this film, and that's a screenplay issue, and we'll get to that later. Before we dig too deep, though, George, But in not being excited about this, should I then assume that you didn't like the original as much as Davey and I and a lot of other people?
That's fair to say. But let me say this. You're calling it the original. That's the problem. It wasn't the original. It wasn't original at all. It was Rocky with a new hero, and Rocky now playing the Burgess Meredith role. I liked Rocky, but even back when Rocky was original, it wouldn't have been my favorite movie in that time. And it's kind of like watching, there have been how many Rockies? 34, 35? It's the clone factor. So there's a limit to how enthusiastic I can get over something like this.
That's why I thought going into the original Creed, it's the original Creed, regardless of, I hear what you're saying about it's part of the Rocky legacy. I have some thoughts on that specifically that I'll get around to. The movie Creed from 3 years ago was outstanding and blew my expectations. And I have some thoughts on why that worked and this didn't. Patrick, you liked Creed, right?
I liked the original one. I was really, really excited for this one.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I really thought it was an exciting, fun movie. The first one, this one was great. I mean, it was fine. I just wish they left it, as like a cliffhanger, as if that the story could continue somehow.
Yeah. And I have a lot of feel like issues, as I mentioned, but we always try to start with something positive on this show. And
Drago was dope.
Along those lines, I do think for me, the most positive thing I can talk about for this film is the performances. And I don't want to suggest that there's an outstanding Oscar-worthy performance like there was in, I want to say the original, but for George's sake, I'll say Creed. I don't say there's an outstanding Oscar-worthy performance like there was in Creed. However, they are all across the board, to me, solid, believable performances. Even the newcomers, for the most part, are from other films in the franchise. So almost all these actors fit into these characters with grace and ease, and it's lovely to watch. Everybody knows their characters so well, they inhabit them. They bring a level of detail and nuance to all their moments, and in many cases, the performances make the sillier aspects of the screenplay a little more palatable. George wants to jump in.
Only to agree with you 100%. I have to say, screenplay-wise, I don't think there was a moment in the movie I couldn't see coming, and some of the dialogue was particularly trite. Everybody in the film invested what needed to be invested to make those moments work. And I don't have a single complaint about anyone in it. I think Michael B. Jordan is a tremendous actor, and I love to see him in a truly great original movie. I loved Fruitvale Station, and I just want to see more from him. They make this movie. I didn't sit there like wanting to run screaming from the theater or anything like that. They make the most of it, and I applaud them for that.
The actors really made it work for me. Patrick, Drago was dope. What else?
I'm one of those who don't think Michael B. Jordan is very good in a lot of the roles that he plays. Fruitvale was great, but I feel like this is a great role for him, and he did do a really good job. The physicality, so you have to give him that. I have to say, at some points in his dramatic moments, I chuckle because I just feel like maybe it was the scripting, but I don't believe him a lot of the time when I see him in a very dramatic space.
Did you have that issue in the original Creed?
Yes. But I loved the action. I loved Rocky in it. I love that this is bringing back a childhood story. It didn't really matter. We were following him in this world that we had lived a long time ago. I just liked following him in this kind of boxing Rocky world. Like, I wanted to continue that Rocky story. So he was helping do that.
I was going to say, I do think it was the screenplay. In the moments that bump for me, like, I'm thinking of the words that he was saying, to George's point, were trite. And I can see him trying to make that work. So I can see interpreting some of those moments as chuckleable, to make up a word. But if you had the issue with the original Creed, then it is a different kind of issue, because I didn't feel any of those moments in the Creed from a couple years ago. What about Black Panther? Not to get too much on a tangent, I thought he was great in Black Panther.
He's just being a badass, and he's just kind of being blasé with his acting. He's fine, right? But then when he's like trying to emote and tell you about his feelings, I see that he's acting. I don't get lost in his character when he's doing those dramatic things. That's just me. A lot of people just say I'm a Michael B. Jordan hater. I don't know.
It's starting to sound like.
But in Rocky, this is his space, okay? Don't talk to me too much. Just be an action hero.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to revisit this, because I see Michael B. Jordan as a great actor of the future. George, sounds like you are with me on that.
He certainly has the potential. I mean, I loved Fruitvale Station. I remember I wasn't a lot of people I know liked the show The Wire a lot more than I did, but I remember him being very good on it. So I I'm always happy to see his name in the credits and happy to see him in a film. So, and really, I have nothing bad to say about his work in this.
Again, my issues are mainly with the screenplay, but I do have some directorial issues in the sense that I feel like all the choices here were right out of the Ryan Coogler playbook. Now, it's a better playbook than most, to be sure, to steal from, and so many moments feel just right. It doesn't bump per se, it just doesn't feel fresh. In Creed 1, there are echoes of the Rocky series, which manages to honor the legacy, but it also carves out its own voice, which is not something I feel like I can say about Rocky 2, 3, 4, 5, and Rocky Balboa.
Yes.
Creed felt original and fresh. Creed 2 feels like a retread. Even the music felt derivative of the first one. This one had the same composer, Ludwig Göransson, I believe. It's the same mix of slightly updated Bill Conti original score and motivational hip-hop. And the juxtaposition of the two happens in the same places in the story. The one original choice the directors seemed to make was to mix in a POV camera during the fights to make you feel like you're getting punched as hard as Creed is. But I actually didn't like that, even though that was like his one original thing. It felt too much like a video game to me. The fights weren't as exciting or as well choreographed as they were in many of the other films, including Creed. With all that said, I did have a couple of those familiar feelings of being psyched and inspired, but not nearly as much as provided by Creed 1 or even Rocky 2 or Rocky 4. All are stronger films than this one.
There was one interesting directorial choice in this that I'm saying interesting. I thought it was a weird one. It didn't really make sense to me. When Creed is, rehabilitating and swimming, going underwater, there's a scene going on elsewhere between Felicia Rashad and Tessa Thompson. You hear them clearly when he is above water, and when he goes underwater, you hear them as though you're hearing them through water, which I found very strange because he wouldn't be hearing them at all.
Yeah, it was parallel editing. Bizarre moment. Yeah, and I don't think it worked. Patrick, anything on the direction?
The originality in this movie was not there, but he didn't mess up the genre.
That's true, but that was part of the excitement about Creed is that it felt fresh. Like, it honored the legacy, but it still had like its own voice, its own perspective.
Just like you said, that's a lot to do with the director and how he pushed the hip hop angle and how he let Michael B. Jordan, be a star. But this one, I just felt was like just a basic Rocky movie that he didn't make any real mistakes. I mean, I thought the water thing was interesting. It didn't take me out because I was already like, this is the workout montage. This is what we want. We were right about to start, his rise. So I don't have anything really bad to say about the direction.
Since you are a composer, and I don't know if George knew that about you.
No.
Patrick is the composer of, among other things, the Sundance Award-winning film Fishing Without Nets from 2014 or something like that.
I have not seen, but based on knowing this, I will.
I haven't seen it either, and I won't because Patrick did it. Patrick, I made that comment about the music. What do you think about Ludwig Göransson's weird mashing up of all the different musical elements?
It was when he was trying to get sentimental in the love scenes that I was like, oh, the music is really apparent here. Like the strings with the soft piano, just trying to make you feel for that couple. And now I'm listening to the music. When the workout scenes are happening, he does a great job of like just pumping you up and just and making you feel like you're in this Rocky world. Of course, he is duplicating what he did before, but what he did before worked.
The sad music that you're talking about was also Bill Conti, like in sort of an updated version of Bill Conti, what Bill Conti was doing, as we have to get to screenplay in a second. But, is the fact that they were recycling too much Bill Conti part of what made you listen to the music?
I don't think I remember that stuff enough to think it was recycled. And maybe because he was recycling that's why it felt a little dated.
I rewatched the original Creed. Sorry, George, I don't know. I rewatched Creed 1, so I remember all the details, and I remember noticing that they switched to the Rocky fanfare at just the right moment in the final fight. They nailed the right moment of when to like hit the dun 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 dun. Like they were perfect with that. This one, I feel like it came in too early and was too often. You know what I mean? Like, it's a balance that they didn't strike.
I do know what you mean. And that may be because they were like, man, we need something that's going to get people pumped because this screenplay is not really working right now.
Yeah. And that will segue to the screenplay. And here's something that one of the big difference between the two screenplays, and it explained a lot to me, as I didn't know this going in, is that Stallone took the franchise back into his own hands. He had no part, aside from maybe counseling, in the original screenplay of Creed. That was Coogler. In this one, Stallone actually wrote the screenplay or co-wrote it with someone else, and Ryan Coogler was not involved. And I'm not trying to paint Ryan Coogler as some cinematic deity. You know, he's only made a few films. I felt like the triteness and things that we're complaining about it are explained by the fact that Stallone wrote it himself.
I think you're right, JB, because even though I did describe the first Creed as being another Rocky, sort of a Rocky spinoff, there was certainly there was enough differentiation in it. You might have expected Creed 2 to branch further into its own identity. And it was a surprise to see it be quite as retro as it is. I didn't realize Stallone didn't have as much to do with the writing of the original film. That explains what we're all talking about here, I think.
Yeah, and it also explains how it's so much more derivative than Creed itself.
Can I say one thing that might be in its defense? I think someone seeing this without having seen any of the earlier films would still like the movie. It's more the fact that we feel we've seen it so many times, at least for me, that makes it hard to be enthusiastic about. It's well done enough.
George, I think you know James. You were in his house. I went with him and his wife, and they really liked it. I think part of the issue, too, is, at least, and I don't want to speak for Patrick, but he might be in my boat, is the excitement was so high, having liked Creed 1 so much, that this feels like a disappointment. To counter your point is I do feel like the cringeworthy moments in this film would be, potentially cringeworthy in any other franchise. And the very premise of the film, Drago's son, is borderline at best. It's very questionable in and of itself. So the foundation of the film is Rocky to begin with, pardon the pun. Add to that this Drago family backstory that they put in there was very forced to me. Rocky's friction with his own kids is forced. The developments with Adonis and Bianca as their storyline grows. So much of that feels like forced elements that Stallone shoves in there to raise the stakes, but none of it feels organic.
Completely. Drago's son, I was watching it, I was like, okay, he's a complicated character. I kind of liked him. By the end of the film, I kind of felt for him. I wanted a bad guy, and what they gave me was kind of a muddy bad guy. And they tried to wrap it up in a bow at the end. I just wasn't feeling that.
I almost appreciated that he didn't quite have horns on his head, except something as dramatic needed to be substituted for that, and I don't know that that was there.
That's my point. I saw him trying to humanize the Dragos. It felt like
quite work.
It was like, I need to humanize the Dragos. How do I do this? It's like he had a finished screenplay and it's like, oh, draft 13, I need to humanize the Dragos, and it's sort of inserted in there in an awkward way. There's an appearance in the movie that had our theater gasping. I don't want to give it away, but I actually found it kind of hokey. There's a handful of that awkwardness. I think Patrick used the word, he chuckled. I said cringeworthy. I think George said rolled his eyes at. I think we're all in the same boat. There was a lot more of that in Creed 2 than there was in Creed 1. That's a disappointment. Sequels in general, I feel like a good sequel has a balance of the familiar, shades of elements that made the first film successful, and also original stuff, something new to get excited about. All the best sequels have that. Even this very weekend, another movie that opened against Creed 2 was Wreck-It Ralph 2, and that's a great example of a great sequel that has shades of the original, but tons of new original stuff to get you excited about. Creed 2 overloaded on the familiar, an alchemist mix of Creed 1 and Rocky 4. And I'm just glad no one told Creed he needed to get the eye of the tiger back. That would have really put it over the top for me.
That would have been amazing.
As much as I love that song. All right, it's time for the T word. And I don't know why we're going to call it that anymore, because without Davey, no one's here to be afraid of the word themes. I've got a couple themes that I wanted to talk to you guys about, but I wondered if you guys have anything.
It wraps up all of that storyline. It's a happy ever after type of a story. Even though you lose, your family's together. And so I don't know if that's the theme that they were trying to go for, but that's what I felt like. Oh, they're trying to wrap up just 2 movies. It was strange. I've never actually seen this before, but like 2 movies they're trying to wrap up in a neat bow. They even went to the cemeteries. The whole thing is.
It's funny. The last 4 Rocky films, Rocky 5, Rocky Balboa, which is basically Rocky 6, Creed, and Creed 2. They all feel like they're trying to wrap up the Rocky storyline without killing off. George, do you have any themes?
Fathers and sons, the lack of a father
That's my number one.
or
Fatherhood is
Apollo.
what I wrote
And
down.
I thought there was an effort to, I wouldn't say contrast, but you were looking at Victor Drago. He has a father who doesn't seem like a very good one from what we see. And it put a link between the two antagonists there, and that the one had to find fathering because he'd lost his father. The other just didn't have a good one. So they were both in need of something to help them.
That was my number one theme. And I actually counted 5 sets of paternal relationships depicted in the film.
Yeah.
They compare and contrast with each other. Because it's not just the Dragos, and it's not just Creed and his late dad, but also Rocky and Adonis, and also Adonis and his newborn, and also Rocky and his son Robert.
Yes.
There's 5 different relationships that they're sort of.
Did you call up the coaches?
Yes, his father was Apollo's trainer, so that's 6
Even more
paternal relationships in the movie. It was definitely on Stallone's mind. I think it's sort of meditating on the role fatherhood plays in the development of a man. And as noble as this theme is, it was so clearly a goal for Stallone, and at the times it felt a little too crafted, a little too written, a little too forced. The reason George and I picked up on it so quickly is that it's so blatant, and maybe too much so for my taste. Patrick?
Listen, I go there to see a cliffhanger almost. Like, I want a great story, and then I want to see how this is going to continue. They try to make it like father and son, kumbaya, in a lot of these ways. I don't want that.
The cold soul of Patrick Taylor.
I mean, maybe one story wraps up like that, but not 4. Not 4 happy ending. Like, you go, like, the whole thing is insane. Not to give away too much.
Away a lot. Slow your roll. All
right, it's insane. It's insanity.
I mean, another couple themes that I have. One is redemption, not just for Adonis, but also for the legacy of his lineage. Do you guys have anything on that redemption? I mean, it's a minor one, but it's still obviously there.
That seems a little strong.
A strong word, or
yeah, because Apollo really has nothing to redeem himself for.
Adonis, you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Adonis does, especially
the family name
after the end of Act 1, he does. And the family name on top of that, which, to your point, is a constant thing that happens in the Rocky
in the franchise. Yes, that's true.
A fight early on in Act 1 that he has to redeem himself from. Even Rocky 4, Rocky is redeeming his legacy because he was supposed to throw the towel and save Apollo from being killed. That formula certainly played again. One thing I do want to talk about, and it's not enough of a theme in the film, but it could have been and should have been. And the word pride comes to mind because I feel like the main flaw in almost all these male characters is an overinflated sense of false male pride. It's behind every bad decision made in the film, and even some of the good ones. It felt like the film accepted it as fact instead of exploring it further, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I wanted it to go down that road and explore how this overinflated sense of pride was creating these bad situations for all of them. Am I off base?
No, I don't feel like you're off base, but my first reaction to that is they're fighters. What else do they have but their name, and their drive is for fame under their name and to say how manly and how masculine they are by beating you up. I don't know. I mean, the genre would be different if they're ballet, and I don't know if they're doing another sport. Perhaps it would be different. But boxing is all bravado. I don't know.
All right. Well, but you know what? That's worth exploring. That's the counterpoint that I find valuable, especially if somebody like Not in That World, Bianca, for example, could maybe come to learn that and find a balance. And they didn't explore that. They just the consequences were less and less for this sort of bravado.
I guess that's true about, when someone is going to devote their life to being a boxer, it's all about me, 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 me. Rocky even talks to him about, you're doing this not to prove anything to anyone else. You've got to prove it to yourself, which only adds fuel to that fire.
And even the mom, or not really the mom, but Marianne says, don't even think this is about your father.
Yeah, she does. That's one thing that might have countered that, especially considering, Felicia Rashad is a wonderful actress. I can't think of a movie that's ever really given her an opportunity to shine in a way that anyone who's ever seen her in a play can tell you she can shine. Yeah. It would have been nice to have her maybe have more of a role here, or if not her, have Bianca have some of the characteristics that would have been nice if she could have countered him more. Exactly. That might have been what was.
But also, it felt like a dumb way to go about it too. Like, after coming back from potential injury and so forth, without giving too much away, he should have had a tune-up fight or two. Not that we needed to see them, but they should at least establish a couple tune-up
Him working his way back.
Yeah, absolutely. That was sort of glossed over. The whole thing felt, rushed in that sense. So that's sort of like some of the bad decisions I'm referring to as well.
Good point.
Thank you. Here's the thing. I think it needs to, whether it's Drago 2 or Creed 3 or Rocky 7, I think at some point Rocky needs to die, doesn't he? Doesn't he actually need to die like Mickey?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as I was watching it.
I mean, I knew it wouldn't happen in this film, but I think at some point he's already had cancer in Creed 1. He had brain damage in Rocky 5. So I mean, at some point, Rocky's got to kick the bucket. This is a series with the same actor that has lasted 42 years. It's insane to think about. And in the history of cinema, it's impressive. Like James Bond is probably, the most impressive series, 50 plus years. That doesn't have the same actor. All 8 of these films have the same actor playing this role. He was nominated for Oscars twice for the same role.
Let's say that would happen. He dies. Do you know that he dies? Is that part of the promotional material? Rocky's dead?
Now you know that Patrick works for an agency in Los Angeles because he's trying to squeeze 2 movies out of it. He's trying to package it.
I'll try to get some more money out of it. I want to see him more, but now I'm definitely more interested in Drago.
Endeavor doesn't handle this franchise. You're not going to get a raise for this.
Michael B. Jordan is definitely a client, so I don't know.
Let's wrap things up. Next up, we have our Indie Spotlight. That's coming up on Monday, December 3rd. Should be our last one of our 4th season, episode 53.2, and it'll be on Monday. It'll be Davey's last show. We're going to do the film The Great Beauty from Paolo Sorrentino. It won the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film as we continue looking at indies from 2013. Next time we talk about current features is we're going to do our top 10. And at the end of February, Oscar week, George will be there for that. Me, George, and James will count down our top 10 films of 2018. And that'll be coming up at the end of February. So that's the next time we're going to talk about a current feature. But we got our Indie Spotlight coming up and a classic next week. Until then, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.